Hey guys, Ryan here. In my last video, I talked about the Final Fantasy set from Magic the Gathering. I talked specifically about some Chocobo cards and a bit of my aggravations with trying to build a deck around them. But today I have a much more lighthearted video, as I'm going to be talking about some of the cards from the Final Fantasy X pre-constructed commander deck, Counter Blitz, which featured Titus Yuna's Guardian as the commander. I just kind of want to go over the flavor of these cards and where they get their abilities from the source in the game, like going to Final Fantasy X and looking at where they're getting this. I'll have probably some accompanying videos to talk about some of these features, and I'll talk a bit about the characters. I won't be getting a lot into the story, but there will be minor spoilers for Final Fantasy X, so just keep that in mind going forward. I'll be talking about the characters in the order they appear in-game, so we're starting with Titus, and then we'll be going down in the order that the other party members that were introduced in. So, starting off with Titus, actually, he is a green, blue, white, 3/3 human warrior, legendary creature, obviously he's the commander. He's got 2 triggered abilities. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from a creature you control to another creature you control, and this can be any kind of counter. This is notable because this deck does have sagas in it, as well as a few other counter systems, like I think there are some shield counters in here and vow counter shenanigans you can do. But point is that he lets you move 1/1 counters, which is what this deck plays off of for the most part. And Titus also has Cheer, a new keyword for him that says whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, if that creature had a counter on it, you draw a card and then proliferate. Proliferating is when you increase the number of counters on any number of players or creatures by 1. When you choose the creature, all their counters go up. So if Titus had a shield counter and a +1/+1 counter on him, both would go up by 1. And if you targeted a player with, say, a poison counter or an experience counter, both of them would go up by 1. 1, not 2. So that's how this deck runs. Titus himself doesn't give 1/1 counters, but he'll very happily move some around. And because of his proliferating, basically, as long as one creature starts with a counter, over time Titus will move counters out to the whole field. And the deck does play around 1/1 counters specifically. Now, I've been thinking about where the theming for this effect comes from. Obviously, he is the party leader, and Cheer as a keyword actually is a direct reference to a skill he has in-game. Cheer increases all characters, I believe, physical attack and physical defense, and goes up slowly in stages, and I think that's where we get Proliferate from. The idea is that it's taking all those buffs that you have on the board and increasing them all slowly over time. That's the easy one. Now, the beginning of combat, moving a counter from one creature to another. I have no clue if there is a direct reference to this. The best I have seen is that the sports minigame in Final Fantasy X called Blitzball is tied to Titus directly a lot, and maybe it has something to do with like passing the ball around. That's kind of the best I've got. Other than that, though, Cheer is a great design, ability-wise. It plays a lot off of what the original Cheer did in Final Fantasy X. And I think they did a pretty good job translating him and his character into Magic the Gathering. Obviously, he took a bit of sacrifices to make him a pretty viable commander. One thing I am a little upset about is he doesn't have haste despite being the fastest base character in the game. But hey, what are you going to do? Can't have one creature with everything. So the next character you run into is Auron. It's Auron, I don't know. I'll be saying Auron for this video. Auron is a 2/5 human spirit samurai. He costs 3 generic and 1 white mana. He has vigilance and a special keyword called Shooting Star. Whenever he attacks, he gains a +1/+1 counter, and he exiles target creature the defending player controls, if it has a less power than him, and it returns if he leaves the battlefield. This is also a really well designed one. Shooting Star is one of Auron's big moves in the game. They call them overdrives. And the way it works is that as long as the character isn't immune to the eject status effect, Auron can eject them from the battle, removing them entirely. In Final Fantasy X, it is a permanent status. Once a character is ejected from the fight, they are gone. They aren't going to come back. I think Magic had to take a couple of liberties nerfing the ability just to make it make more sense in what we know in Magic. And I think Auron actually does something really well, which is show how to flavor a card, but balance it at the same time. So he has this really well-known banish effect that we understand in Magic. You know, think of like Banishing Light and the such. Exiling a permanent until the permanent that exiled it leaves as well. And that's awesome. I think that he does a great job supporting Titus's playstyle while being familiar to Magic. We want him to attack. He's vigilant, so he's going to serve as a good blocker. He gets a good stat line for that, being a 2/5. And with the regular exile, he creates essentially his own mini threat. He's getting bigger, which feeds Titus, but he himself is pulling attention away. which makes Titus a little bit less of a target when they're both on the field. And that's actually a theme you're going to see with a lot of these cards. Literally every single character from the main party play into each other perfectly. Speaking of which, let's get on to Riku. Riku in the game is a thief. I believe the class is called Thief. So she is a 2 generic, 1 blue, 2/3 human artificer. Artificer is actually, I want to talk about that one already. Her overdrive is called Mix. She has her own special item pool because she actually gets 2 skills called Steal and Use, which allows her to steal items exclusive to her item pool, among other items. But with her overdrive Mix, she mixes any 2 items from that item pool and makes some big new effect with it. And making her an artificer makes so much sense when you're considering that specific part of her kit. So, whenever one or more counters are put on a creature until end of turn, that creature can't be blocked by creatures your opponents control. This is important for 2 reasons. One, obviously it pairs incredibly well with Titus, as when he moves counters, he's still putting them on a creature, which means that if he moves a counter from, say, Auron to himself, Riku will give Titus unblockable. Which is obviously going to play more into Titus, as he wants creatures with counters to deal damage, and she's just feeding that specific condition to be met, giving that modified creature unblockable to get the damage trigger. She also has Steal as her own special keyword. For 1 generic and tapping her, you can choose a target creature an opponent controls, and steal a counter from them and put it on any other creature. A lot of good things from this. First of all, obviously, in the sense of flavor, Steal was one of her main abilities, and it worked just like that. You just took an item from the opposing creature. For this deck, I think it's incredibly important, just because any other deck that wants to put like shield counters or indestructible counters or flying counters, like looking at like, does Bumbleflower give flying counters? I don't think Bumbleflower does a flying counter, actually. You know what I mean, though. If someone were to put like a shield counter on a creature, she could steal it, throw it on Titus, and then he'll start proliferating it and passing it around. Again, it plays incredibly well into Titus's playstyle, regardless on whether or not she handles 1/1 counters. But another thing that's important is she actually is a field-wide effect. If any creature gains a counter, it is unblockable for that turn, as long as it's attacking one of your opponents. That does mean that if you're playing against other modifier decks that are throwing a lot of counters around, Riku is going to give you an advantage in being less likely to be targeted. Of course, they can still attack you, this isn't goading, but it is going to heavily influence the board to attack people who aren't you. Assuming they play with counters. We're gonna look at Waka, Devoted Guardian. He is a 2 generic, 1 green, 1 white, 4/4 human warrior, legendary as well, with Reach and Trample, and we're already going to get into this. Reach is amazing for him to have in Final Fantasy X. He is the character who, by default, is the best at hitting airborne enemies. Final Fantasy X went the route of having 2 types of high evasion, a speed-based evasion, and what I'm assuming is just like a flying modifier stat where creatures that are in the air are harder to hit. But Waka throws a projectile in the game and hits enemies no problem. So giving him Reach is perfect here. As for Trample, I'm not too sure why he has Trample. I've been thinking about it a lot, and part of it might be the fact that he kind of serves as the game's green mage, applying statuses, and that maybe the Trample helps him to get through to enemies to apply the quote-unquote status he needs to apply, which in this case would be giving Titus's damage trigger. I don't know. I don't think Trample really means too much here in the sense of flavor. I think it plays more into his own effect, where when he deals combat damage to a player, you destroy up to 1 target artifact that player controls, and you put a +1/+1 counter on Waka. Similar to Auron, he just kind of gets his own 1/1 counters on himself, which will trigger Riku, but also enable Titus, which both really good. As for the destroying an artifact, I'm not too sure exactly what that comes from. Part of what I'm getting is a bit from the Blitzball side of it. In Blitzball, there is a shooting mechanic where the player obviously shoots the ball into the goal. You'll see a clip somewhere on screen here. And there's one called the Ject Shot, where the player actually uses a couple of bounces to disable enemy players before making the shot. I kind of want to say that's part of this, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe it could also just be playing into the idea of he kind of just throws the ball at things, and he's just throwing it at your artifacts. I don't really know. He gets his own keyword, Blitzball Captain. This is our first special keyword that isn't actually a direct reference to a skill in-game. Instead, it's referring to Waka himself. He is a captain of the Besaid Aurochs. And he's a bad captain at that. They're a failing team, which is why I kind of hate that they put this here. But at the beginning of your end step, if a counter was put on Waka this turn, put a 1/1 counter on every other creature. Essentially, he proliferates a little bit of a roundabout way, and he specifically checks for if he gained a counter, and he doesn't need to attack for this. I've seen a lot of people, when they put him on the board, they just start moving counters from Titus to Waka to basically double their proliferate, and nothing really changes. Waka just kind of acts as a secondary Titus, just a little bit weaker in my opinion. And that's just kind of it. Flavor-wise, I don't think he's an amazing card. I really wish they played more into his status-heavy green mage kind of play style. Some people I've heard talking about it think they didn't do it because in Final Fantasy X, no character is dedicated to a class. They have the sphere grid system, which allows you to learn any abilities as long as the character moves to that part of the skill tree of sorts. It's kind of like a giant skill tree, and any player can learn anything, or any character can learn anything, so I don't agree with it because every other character was kind of played around their exact abilities. Moving on to Lulu, Stern Guardian. I don't like this card. Lulu in-game is a black mage. She focuses pretty heavily on damaging magics, focusing on elemental weaknesses, and just being one of the magic casters. She's the black mage, you know? We have a lot of black mages in this set, and I thought they were going to give her a somewhat similar effect. I thought she was going to kind of have like a black waltz effect, and, you know, deal damage whenever like counters are put on creatures or something, or when like maybe whenever you proliferate, you deal damage to people. I don't know, but instead, whenever an opponent attacks you, choose target creature attacking you, and you stun that creature. And for 3 generic and a blue, she proliferates. Stat lines don't matter because this is kind of just not a great card. The 4 mana proliferate's the only thing to talk about, just purely because she can put stun counters on creatures and then keep those stun counters there. The only issue is that this deck can't really force stun counters except from the trigger of when an opponent attacks you. She also can only do 1 per attack, as it's whenever an opponent attacks, not whenever a creature attacks. So you're getting 1 stun counter, sure you can proliferate it, but you can't move that counter at all. So you can just kind of lock out 1 creature, which has nothing to do with Lulu. Again, she is the damaging magic caster. It makes no sense that this is what she does. I'm assuming this was more just to play around the counter situation with Titus, and it kind of just led to a lack of flavor. Moving away from a lack of flavor, let's talk about another really well-flavored card. With Yuna Grand Summoner, this is the Alt Commander. And I've seen people argue all the time on which one's actually the better commander, but Yuna is awesome. She gets Grand Summon, which is the name of her overdrive. In-game, when you used Grand Summon, your summon would come out. She summons Aeons in that game, and they would come out with their overdrive. So, you tap to add 1 mana of any color, and whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with 2 1/1 counters on it, which is awesome, plays directly into everything this deck does. I tend to argue that Titus is still the better commander because she pairs well with Titus, but Titus doesn't inherently pair well with her. It's better to have Titus more readily available than her in my opinion, but we can argue back and forth. Whenever a permanent you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, if it had any number of counters on it, they become 1/1 counters and you put them all on target creature. This is the big thing that makes her such a popular commander, is that essentially your counters never go away if you're playing your cards right. You drop a Everflowing Chalice with 6 counters on it. Oh, shocker, they pop the rock because you've got 3 free mana. Nope, you've actually got 6 1/1 counters on Titus now, and now he's going to be killing you with mana damage. Or fuck, put him on Yuna and let her be the fucking heavy hitter. She's awesome, really good. Grand Summon's a great way of playing around it, I will say. I don't think there's any real connection to in-game abilities and the moving counters on death. My only guess is that she does cast life magics. She's the game's white mage, meaning she works on curative magics, status preventive magics, and, like I said, revival. But she doesn't actually revive any creatures, it's just keeping the counters alive, so I don't know how heavy of a tie that is. Now, for my favorite card in the entire Final Fantasy sets, Kimahri, Valiant Guardian. We're gonna get these guys out of here. Let's talk about this guy. I love Kimahri. Kimahri is the best fucking creature ever. For 2 generic, a green and a blue, he is a 3/3 cat warrior with vigilance. He has Ronso Rage, which is the name of his overdrive. He is the blue mage of Final Fantasy X, and part of his effects in game is that he had the skill Lancet. Lancet steals a small amount of HP and MP from the opponent, and then if they have a skill that Kimahri can learn, he will learn that skill permanently as one of his overdrives through Ronso Rage. Ronso Rage as an overdrive is just a list of every like skill he's stolen from an enemy, and they translated that perfectly to Magic. So, at the beginning of combat at your turn, let's say Titus is on the field, the opposing side, Kamari says, I'm going to point at that creature, I'm going to tap that creature. I will gain a 1/1 counter, and I will become that creature. So he just steals all their abilities, taps them down, gains a 1/1 counter, and he keeps his vigilance and that ability. So every single turn he will copy more abilities and he will keep vigilance. Now, he is only a copy of one creature at a time, so it's not like he's going to stack all the abilities up. But I think it's a great way of showing that Lancet Ronso Rage system from 10. And it's so weird that, despite not being the strongest in this deck, Kamari's been one of the most well-translated and best on his own. I really want to build a deck around him just because he is such a good creature in his own right. He can't lose a 1v1. If there's ever a time where there is him versus another creature, he will always be able to tap that creature down and then swing through. And if somehow they're able to untap him, well, he becomes exactly their stats with a 1/1 counter. He will always be bigger than the creature he's copying, assuming it's also unmodified. So it's just like, he's just such a good creature. I fucking love this. Anyway, yeah, that's all I want to talk about today. I mean, I think they're all good. I guess just a quick tier list on how well they're all made. I think Kamari's easily the best when it comes to design. I think Arin probably right next, then Titus, Riku, Yuna, Waka, and Lulu. Yeah, I think in that order, from top to bottom, that's the most flavorful cards, the most faithful to their originals. I feel like most of these do a good job balancing themselves between being flavorful and being referential to the source material, while also being unique to Magic, or establishing or like re-establishing abilities that we're already familiar with characters like Arin bringing Banishing back in. Even someone like Kamari, who is abusing essentially every mechanic they can to make him as flavorful as possible, while not diverting from Magic systems and the theme of the deck being counters. Him copying the creature is great, and tapping the creature is just needlessly strong. They didn't need to throw that on there, but I think it's great. So, yeah, I'd say the entire deck, on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'd give the deck like an 8 for flavor, maybe even a 9. I think a lot of it's really good. I don't have too much to say about arts today, because like I said, we'll talk about the arts more if I make another video, but like, some of the Mana Rock reprints, they're all great in this set. Each deck had amazing reprints, but Everflowing Chalice is one of the, what are they even called? I don't even know what these things are called. I love the game, but they're these little like pedestals you put spheres into in some puzzles in the game. And it's just so recognizable. Anyone who's played the game, they see Everflowing Chalice, they see this thing that transfers energy around, and they go, yeah, that's the fucking card I would have picked too. So, you know, maybe I'll make another video talking about the full deck, all the arts and stuff. I've got a lot to say about this deck. I've played 10 a fuck ton, so maybe we'll get about that one day, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's the whole video. If you guys want to see me talk about the whole deck, just shoot a comment or something, I don't care. Like the video if you want to see more Magic stuff, and bye. I don't fucking know. What YouTube? Remember when YouTubers had like cringe outros like, I will see you in the next video?